start class in the usual way. Everyone online. All right, so from the first to last class, pretty consistent attendance. I thought we'd suffered some attrition here in Eugene with all the beautiful weather, which seems to be a little bit true and seems fairly reasonable. I think my cheeks might be a little bit red. Joichi and I, we fell asleep in the new rocking chairs outside in the sunshine, the cat on my lap. It was pretty much a heavenly realm. Pretty nice. So, I don't have much planned for tonight. Besides, I gave some homework to sort of be thinking a little bit about the bottom left corner of that sheet that I gave everyone. I think I titled it Buddha's Mind online. That character in the very center of the graph means mind in Japanese. I think this is pretty much how Ejo's mind works. He'll write a central kind of theme in the center of a talk he's going to give, and then sort of like dance out from there as a mandala. So we get to peer into the teacher's mind, which is always fun. So I sort of poked people to look carefully at that square, but maybe I have sort of one activity I'd like to do tonight, which will take maybe 20, 25 minutes. So maybe we can start with questions or interesting thoughts people had in relationship to the sheet or any other of the materials I presented last class, or I gave a lot online this last time. So what's bopping around for people? Louise?
You're calling on me? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I guess who you're pointing at. I read through all of the feedback that everyone gave from the last class, and it was really wonderful to read all of that. And I was really struck by how many people the six realms resonated. That was really interesting. I don't know if you were expecting that. But kind of all the things we have talked about, that seemed to be a really useful framework for a lot of people, as it was for me. But it was helpful to see how many other people mentioned that, and kind of in a similar context.
Yeah. I actually was sort of expecting that. One of my whole intentions for this class was like, how do I really make that the central thing? Because for me, that was one of the teachings that really brought Buddhism alive and made something really digestible that otherwise felt pretty nebulous and I'm like, oh, okay, no self, I sort of get that, impermanent, I sort of get that, but it's like being in the heavenly realm, oh, I get that. Being in a hell realm, ugh,
right.
I get that. So, yeah.
And I don't remember who it was that mentioned that was a kind of more tangible construct and more accessible than Buddhism as a series of numbered lists, which is something that I've struggled with too.
Yeah.
There are a lot of numbered lists, and it's very hard to kind of relate to those all simultaneously. But the Six Realms framework, I think, is something that's really accessible and can be related to kind of our present condition in daily life. So.
Yeah. They did a clever thing there. They took the six of them and they just put them in a circle. And they said, it's different, and it is different. But yeah.
It is, yeah.
It's pictures.
Yeah. Good pictures. Did other people read the reflections, everyone? Then? I thought it was really great to read those.
Yeah, earlier I was thinking, Erin, I really appreciated that she brought up the video you sent out about the woman speaking about karma and addressing the past lives, or the like being born into like terrible circumstances from past lives, and that I have a really strong aversion to hearing that, and I hear it as like a justification for racism.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that she brought that up in that thing, because I had a very similar feeling to it. I have a really negative reaction to hearing karma presented in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of curious if anyone else, how other people's perception or reception of that idea or that video.
Yeah, well, Holly's talking about that presentation. I think it was a 5-minute video by a Tibetan practitioner I'm not familiar with. Her name's Amy Miller, but she was talking about karma, talked about people born into war-torn circumstances as likely having like sort of they're kind of reaping the karma from a previous life. people watch that or feel other responses? Or Gayla, are you going to jump in there? Not going to jump in, but sort of nodding in agreement. Cindy?
Well, you reap what you sow. I don't disagree with them.
Yeah, say more.
I just feel like what you do in your life, how you live your life, how you think your life is going to affect, because everything goes into play. It's for every action there's a reaction. And so everything that you do flows in a certain way. And of course, it follows you. So if I do horrible things in this life, certainly the circumstances and the things that I put in motion will haunt me, for want of a better word, in the next life.
Yeah, I wonder, for me, the really strong aversion there can come to part of my nature feeling like, oh, okay, well, maybe if that law of cause and effect is as tight as maybe Amy is saying, or you might be thinking there, that be like, oh, that person deserves it. So it means I might not do what another part of my nature says needs to be done to fight injustice.
That's kind of a... It's not me, because myself, I feel like I need to fight injustice. And I'm fighting for this person over here who may have bad karma.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter to me, because what he does from a minute before, because of change, he is still a good person, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. That seems like very much a Buddha's response to living beings. Saying, oh, I don't really care what you've done in the past. Either way, you're a being worthy of liberation and of the nature of becoming a Buddha, of already being Buddha, of impermanence and no self. So I can help you realize that. I can help you get you out of the hole. I can jump in with you. Yeah. Did anyone read the piece by Ken McLeod? We'll read that about the Bodhisattva vow. Yeah, James, you can jump in.
I said I read it. You never remember it.
Oh. Did anything, why I got you unmuted. Anything jump out to you that you found interesting or lively or kind of extending your ideas?
I read that piece and then I got sidetracked into another piece going into Dharma gates, because I've been kind of kicking around what those actually... I've always had difficulty with the concept of Dharma gates as, in my mind, they're always it's a very literal impression of, oh, it's a gate, you walk through it. But I can't remember the author, but I did find an article that went into them more as an expression of essentially the moments in time that we have the opportunity to express or realize Buddha mind. And that the statement that the Dharma gates are boundless is an indication that every moment, every cycle of our consciousness is an opportunity. We just have to look and find them.
Yeah.
I think the metaphor that was used was a tree with an iguana in it, and they were on like a boating trip. And the guy stops and goes, okay, everybody look and see the iguana. And nobody can see the iguana in the tree, and all of a sudden you're staring at the tree, and you're all just sitting and relaxing and watching the tree. And then one after another, people start, oh, I see it. And then eventually everybody's like, oh, there's an iguana in the tree. You just don't see it at first. That was the metaphor that was used for Dharma gates, is you don't see them. But if you relax and you calm yourself and you're patient, they arise and they appear.
And I wonder, kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, kind of mixing that with the teaching of karma that we've been talking about, and how sometimes you might have the opportunity to simply not do a bad thing, not do something that is obviously not helpful to the world and aligning yourself with the teachings or the truth or reality, whatever you want to say. And then sometimes you have the opportunity to do good things, and sometimes you have the opportunity to go beyond good and bad, of participate in a karma that ends karma, of kind of perfect fruition of your attention. And actually I'll talk more about, that's the thing I want to present tonight, the karma that ends karma, which I think that kind of realizing Buddha mind, that kind of talk is usually pointing at the karma that ends karma. Yeah, thanks, James.
I really appreciate the 6 perfections that you presented in the last class didn't really resonate with me, and I really appreciated the way that he presented that in the article. Where he says like generosity of spirit and honesty with ourselves. In that, like the ethics part is like honesty with ourselves and patience to endure our own confusion, and just that somehow the way that he worded it resonated with me a lot more and gave me a lot more understanding.
Yeah. And actually, while I was reading that, it took me a second to realize he had done that. I was like, oh yeah, those are all great things. These are great things. And then at the end he was like, and these are the 6 perfections. I was like, wait a second, did you just like pull a Buddhist inception over me? And he had, and I thought it was really clever, well done.
Right, and that was the same thing. I really resonated. I was like, oh yes, yes, and then I was like, oh, that's that thing I was talking about. But it like made a lot more sense when I read it that way. So I also really liked the poem on emptiness that he had in there. That was excellent.
How about pointing us all kind of towards the same thing, that mind sheet that I had sent everyone, in that bottom left corner, that sort of descriptions of enlightenment. This comes from a famous sutra. Not produce, does not age, does not suffer death, does not pass out of existence, does not come into existence, cannot be forcibly handled, cannot be carried away by thieves, rests on nothing, is the pathway of the noble, presents no obstacles, is endless. Did that strike anyone? Interesting place? Yeah, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, it touches to me the kind of mind that I experience when I kind of let go of my expectations or a lot of my preconceptions of things and kind of just am present with whatever situation I'm currently in. Like, for example, this morning I was very tired, and so it's like when I let go of that tiredness as a like, I don't know, like a parachute of dragging behind. If I just say I'm tired and yet I still need to go drive my car and go to work, it's kind of a different kind of being that I was able to like tune into, where it wasn't like the tiredness was gone, it just was no longer like the definition of how I felt. It was kind of like just this side part of me. Like I have blue eyes, I'm tired, I'm going to work. And to me that kind of speaks to this like ability to, for me to get in touch with just a more rooted being that is beyond like the definitions that I'm constantly conjuring about how I am being, and then just simply being. And every so often, if generally when I'm stressed out or feeling bad in a certain way, I have to like take a breath and tune into this like, okay, I'm not stressed out, or I'm not overworked, or I'm not, like these are all definitions that I'm telling myself that I am. And so like these teachings help point me to a place where I can kind of always go and carry with me that is beyond those kinds of self-described adjectives.
Yeah.
So I appreciate those lessons that I can grab onto in periods of calm. I hope to be able to take them like in every moment. And just like I feel like that's like my like superhero version of the Buddha, is like someone who can like always be there in that moment, and that's how I like to see like that's how I envision like the Zen masters and people like who are able to have that kind of experience while running full sprint through the woods, you know. It's like
yeah,
to cultivate that kind of centeredness even while you're amidst
yeah, thanks, Daniel.
amazing swirl that is existence. So that's where that speaks to me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did anyone have a specific line out of all of those that like hit them? At least for me, the one that really gets me every time is cannot be forcibly handled. I think that's just a really beautiful statement that kind of strikes at the heart of my usual way of approaching the world, which is handling something and with some measure of like, I can affect the world to make it good, better, my life feel better, good, that I can always rely on a level of agency to kind of manhandle the objects of the world into a good shape. And that one just says, what the heart of wisdom and compassion, awakening, it cannot be forcibly handled, right? And so when it appears in the world, it's kind of what's interesting is, for me at least, I can never see it coming out in like I don't get to see that not forcibly handled. I get to allow things to be. And those things get to have a shape, right? Rather than I can't actually see the not forcibly handling things, but I can witness a softness appear in my life. Yeah, Eric?
I think that whole box can kind of relate to, at least for me, what strikes me, I guess the most similar comparison I can make to is like anatman, so like the idea of impermanence, and specifically like the two lines, does not come into existence, does not pass out of existence. Just like it's, everything is ephemeral. It comes, it goes.
Yeah.
That's really what it makes me think of, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What you were just saying called to mind a story I just read. There's a famous teacher in Japan. I forget what age he lived. His name is Menzan. He's kind of a revivalist of our school. And he was eating something sweet, maybe an orange or something, with his teacher one day. And his teacher said, Menzan, where does the sweetness come from? And he hurried to chew the fruit and swallow it. And he said, well, it's kind of a silly question, master, from various causes and conditions, and then sweetness arrives. And the teacher said, oh, that's just cold logic. And he says, oh, well, master, then please tell me, where does it come from? Oh, shoot, did I forget the punchline?
Take my next class.
I can describe it, which might even be more fun. If we can imagine we're always thinking out in time, that this is happening next and this is happening next, and then if you just stop it and imagine that always stays, and then things just come and go from there, but the backdrop is actually what is real. So it's something like from nowhere, but it's definitely not that. But anyway, what happens there is we're thinking life is a progression. Shoot, I'm so sorry, guys. I did all that wind up and everything, so I'll send that out in a little follow-up email. But anyways, it's a really radical shift that if you start thinking, oh, it happens here, it happens there, and then we think in this, we carry around a mind that says, aha, I can affect cause and effect, which there's something true about that. We know that some things happen through time, but actually, the place of life is really immediate, and it's grabbing us all the time. And if we can actually have a consciousness that's focused on not affecting things in the future, not just receiving things from the past, but really present here now with all the nitty-gritty fullness of life. So I think that's one of the things that is being talked about there, that's like a tangible part of our life. Whereas I think mostly, at least I walk around with a consciousness that says, ooh, is there something interesting? Is there something noteworthy that I like or that I don't like? And now I'm gonna start playing a game of action of how to control that. But a consciousness that says, oh, no matter what's here, whether mundane or interesting or vibrant or dull, no matter what it is, I can be present and attentive and with it. And with it.
So I'm really struggling with this idea of emptiness, right? I mean, I'm trying to sit with it, and so that's this rests on. I mean, all of it, but the rests on nothing I think I just keep like imagine just like being out in space where it's just like blackness. There's just rest there, you're not rests on nothing. And the emptiness, I guess, that's in there, and like you're saying, it's not. I don't know.
That's actually another, I forgot I was going to mention that. That's another classic epithet for awakening or like nirvana, is it's like space. Which goes well with what I was just saying, that it's not, space is a really fascinating thing. It's empty, but it contains and allows everything, right? And yet usually you could say a human heart is pretty much preoccupied with what it can see and what, within our level of consciousness what appears, versus a consciousness that might be attentive to even the not space of a situation. Yeah, James? And then I think after James, we'll go into some of the content I'm going to present for tonight.
Well, since you told a joke, I thought I'd tell a joke as well.
Is that how it works? It can right now.
So, Zen Master and a few of his students are walking through the forest. Zen Master picks up a stick, turns to one of his students, says, "What is this?" And the student opens his mouth, and Zen Master hits him with it. Turns to the next student. "What is this?" The student opens his mouth to say something. Zen Master hits him with a stick. He turns to the third student and says, "What is this?" And the student grabbed the stick from the Zen Master and hit him with it. Immediacy of experience versus intellectualization.
Mm-hmm.
That's the joke.
Thank you for your teaching. All right. So what if everyone would pull out the question or the thing I sent people online? And Joichi, could you hand out the one in class that's behind you? So to preface this, I thought I did quite a poor job in explaining yesterday or last class karma that ends karma. I thought I was feeling back, and I actually went back and watched the video, and I was just like, that's no good, and that's fine. It's a challenging concept, and so like any good student, I went and asked my teacher about that, and instead of trying to preface what he said, I think we can read through and look at that together. And I thought about sending this out later, or kind of breaking it down into sections, but I thought he did a really good job of talking about it, and so we'll just read through together, and I think this could bubble up quite a few questions for people, and I hope bring some clarity to this really the central part of, I think, what makes Buddhist practice, this idea that karma, the energies of our lives that have this kind of grinding onto hoping for an outcome, hoping to control the world in some way, that these energies, habit energies, are all moving through us, and the deep belief that could come to a total and complete stop in us. Whether that's particular, selves of the 6 realms that we tend to hang out with, or within the whole fullness of our being and all beings, that we can actually, the Buddha could become a teacher for all people, because all of greed, hate, and delusion was totally emptied out for him. So this is really, the idea of karma ending karma is totally central to foundational Buddhism. So how should we do this? I think I'll read maybe halfway, and then I will ask if anyone else wants to read the next half of the paragraph or something like that. And I'll kind of look up every once in a while, and maybe I'll give some commentary here and there if, I feel moved to. And if anybody has a question coming up at one spot, just raise your hand, and we'll stop right then and there and sort of jump in. That sound like a plan? All right. Oh, Honorable Master, can you talk about meditation as the practice of the karma that ends karma? So a teacher once described meditation as the radical intention of non-intendedness. And he actually kind of forgot something while he was teaching too. I think what he meant to say was attentive non-intendedness. I think I'd heard the joke before. Attentive non-intendedness, or something like that. I can't remember. So to enact attention without intention, Karma is always flowing in relationship with intention, or karma is intention, the flow of intention, the causes and conditions of intention. In meditation, what we are doing in relationship to karma is not messing with it. We aren't leveraging it. There is no lever. And so, without a lever, there can be a different thing that happens normally with the flow of intention. So, right here we can see how this harkens back to the very first concepts we were doing of there's no self and other. There are no objects of our experience without the mind that is experiencing it. Objects are arising in relationship to the mind with which we are viewing it. And so if you can see in meditation, we are endeavoring to perceive that. And in fact, the perceiving of that means to realize that we can't affect a change in that karma that we are receiving. We talked about there's basically the aspects of our being is that there's kind of intendedness of going forward, and then there's the part of our being that's always receiving our karma. So if we can think about that kind of circle, that kind of rough idea of karma, we have that intendedness which turns around. It no longer is looking outward at becoming, at affecting change, but really it's turned backward, and its focus, its intention is on receiving, right? It's in experiencing our karma as it's moving through us, and no longer intending outward for another experience or a different kind of experience. I know that's kind of a lot, but I think it becomes clear, when he's going through. So when we think of a thought, for example, once a thought comes into consciousness, there has already been a chain of thoughts that weren't in our awareness. And once the thought is there in our awareness, like a window of our mind, then we quickly turn it into the next thought, turn it into the next thought, the next thought, the next thought. And we can feel ourselves doing that. And there is intention in that. Each time we are turning the thought into the next thought, the next thought, the next thought, there is an intention that carries it. But that doesn't mean we mean to do it. Like I'm there thinking, I'm going to keep thinking this. But the momentum of the karma is unfolding in that thought continuing. I think that's very clear language for something we all experience every time we sit down on the meditation cushion, or in fact just keep singing a little song in our head just walking around in the world. There's this odd part of us that is grinding on something that we can't actually reach immediately, but is there in our intention nonetheless, right? People nod a little bit if they've had that experience. I'm pretty sure that's pretty universal. Yeah, right? Grinding on something that there's a part of our intention there, but our conscious mind and our conscious intention, what we sort of have power to move around or feel like we can move around, can't really get at it. It can't touch it, which can be like incredibly infuriating, as I think you all know. So in meditation, we are practicing this deep intention with the release of the intention. So right at the beginning, intention of non-intendedness. We are practicing this deep attention with the release of intention. In that, there's a chance to see things in a different way. A thought doesn't have to be intended into another thought, intended into another thought. It can, as one famous ancestor said, it is as if the birds in the sky turn to stone. They fall to the ground. That becomes possible in meditation, whereas in our normal way, any thought which comes up has to get made again and again and again because there is energy behind it. This is very different from cutting it off and getting rid of them. It means the completion of attention that allows the karma to flower there in our heart-mind, and its flower in our heart-mind offers its release. That's the ending of karma. So for me, how that strikes is really, can you imagine that if you're sitting down and sitting in meditation, we can take that as the kind of example we're using. If your only intention while you're sitting there is to really fully experience whatever's going on and loose any idea of evaluating your experience, whether it's good or bad, of thinking how your effort might relate to future causes and conditions, future experiences. Any attempt to try and grasp the meaning or importance of your effort, and simply you're there totally full with whatever's coming through that window of your mind. If we can do that, no matter what the experience is, it can flower and it can release. It can flower and it can release. Even if it comes as being the same thing again and again and again and again, we can still be there with it completely and not push it forward and having it go into new experiences, new hopes, oftentimes trying to make something go away. We can be there with it. And I think one side of this, and I think he'll get into it. Yeah, I won't say too much more there. So most of the karma we come across in our meditation, we won't be able to do that. That's why we need to not be too tight-fisted about using some techniques. That took me a long time to learn that any technique is not really zazen, but I changed my thoughts about that. So that's why when you're sitting, if you're totally overwhelmed by things, just count your breaths. This regular teaching that's given. Count your breaths. Become thoroughly engrossed in your bodily sensations. Find a sound and really place your intention there. So we could sort of take refuge in the physicality of our being versus usually taking refuge in the quality of our thoughts up here. There can be a way to kind of move that energy from just driving forward in the world like this. One thing, next thing, next thing, next thing. And it can be breath, in, out, breath. And then the way I'll usually teach in meditation is once you find some stability emerge, then release that object of your investigation and allow the bounds of your being to sort of extend, include your feelings, your thoughts, your heart, all the sounds and such. But that there are times it's not quite possible to really have this attentiveness to things that aren't just our thought gates going forward and forward and forward and forward. Oh, honorable teacher, can you give us some hints as to the intention which does not intend? Well, that's the koan, that's the mystery. People familiar with that term koan? That's one you'll come across in the Zen school fairly often. You're hanging out right now in the Soto Zen school, which sort of says the paradox of our being is every moment. Every moment of our experience has a shape and no shape. And it's our job to fully explore that in each moment. Whereas there's another school of Zen which says that's also true, but they use this thing called a koan curriculum, which they're teaching stories of questions and answers between masters and disciples, which sort of give little glimpses into how this could be. Not too dissimilar from the story that James just told, actually, where there's kind of a vibrant encounter and someone might get hit on the side of the head now and again. So anyway, that word koan, that's the koan, that's the mystery. It's that when you point yourself at it, then you miss. But if you don't try, then you just stay in your karmic mess. And so the application of effort, the application of intention, becomes the koan that we are working with as meditation. If we think about it abstractly, then it's just unsolvable. But in the actuality of meditation, it's just not a problem. Feel what is there in the body. When you are feeling your breath, you are very directly feeling your karma. The quality of your breathing is completely tied to what your state is. So you're accepting. You're feeling the state of your karma, and you're allowing it to be. So that attending can just be a very simple fact of being there, of living. So there we can kind of look back at that square in that sheet that I handed out. It's not produced, does not age, cannot be forcibly handled. It rests on nothing. It's the pathway of the noble. It presents no obstacles. It's endless. So there, if we take it up as our goal to simply attend to and be with our karma, that will be an endless process. That actually isn't a problem. You won't die when you're sitting meditation, even though sometimes you feel like you will be. One of the teachers of a monastery up outside of Portland, she's so sweet and so wonderful. Her name is Jan Chosen Bays. She told me this story of early on in her practicing. She said she would have to sing Mary Had a Little Lamb to herself during meditation to just make it through. And she'd be like, Mary has a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary has a little lamb. Ring the goddamn bell. And she said she'd go through that again and again. And so we can feel that when we're sitting meditation, there's something in us that it just feels like it's going to explode, right? But actually, as we ease into it more and more and start to take care of our pain, start to take care of our ego's frustration about its inability to affect our karma, we can have glimpses of leaning into just presence, just being there. And it's a very different cause and effect with the flow of our being. And then if you push too hard with the breathing, then you move into the intention that is trying to do something with the karma. If you just space out, then the karma will just take you wherever it wants to go. So that balance has to emerge in the doing. When we practice without relying on technique or thinking that meditation practice will get us something, it is more challenging and more difficult in many ways, but definitely more fulfilling. Actually, we get down to the questions of life and death if we practice that way. Not just, am I going to keep my stuff together? Keep it together. I'll come face to face with the deep karma of life and the deep karma of my life. That is really worth something different than kind of getting things to work well. Because when you can face the karma of your own being, when you can really face the beauty and treachery of a human life, that is what we long for, not just all going smoothly. Although it's very nice when it goes smoothly. Very nice. I feel like I won't really defile those words with any commentary. I really like that, the beauty and treachery of a human life. I don't know, I feel like a number of times a day, I just have the realization that actually being alive is just, it's actually enough. It can be enough just to be a body, be my body, have my problems, help a friend move some wood. It's really enough if I allow my heart to meet it as such. And in doing that, I also find that I receive a kind of pain from that, my personal experience, that there's a part of me that wants it to be more. I want there to be something that I can even be aiming for, something that I can even be cultivating or make happen. But that the simplicity is so available, it's quite disarming in a certain kind of way. Anyone want to jump in? Cindy?
Well, I really like the way that he talks about your breath and that it being your karma.
Yeah.
And I really can associate with that because that's something that that is based in reality, kind of. My breath is based in reality. It's not a metaphysical or a philosophical thing. And I can accept that, without question.
Do you feel that to be true as you're sitting? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Me too. And really, that's why, the breath is so central in every Buddhist school at the very least, and probably in most religions. And that word spirit and aspirate are, they share a similar etymology. and being rooted in kind of the life force. And not just in the kind of movement of our being, but also actually in the movement of our spirit, our heart. Like it's leaving a calling card, the quality of the breath.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe anyone we haven't heard from yet want to jump in?
I think I'm drawn to that last, sort of those last few lines, I guess, articulating the goal of what we're doing here is not to find joy or happiness, like those things may come and then they also may leave. But this focus or face, or like when they arise, to be able to face them and having that be a goal as opposed to this outcome that will not stay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna sit with that for a while.
Yeah. That still feels like a hard one for me to stomach, and something I have to like recalibrate in my intention like all the time. And I also, I don't know, I find, I just feel very often how that's an intention that just leads me, it's not very helpful. Especially, like, I'll notice sometimes when I have a situation that's really nice, and then someone needs help. And it's going to be uncomfortable for me to do that. And I thought of just like, this is all about feeling good, and now I've sort of got it, even if I'm doing something that may look difficult for someone. But then something else is asked of me, and I can feel the tug, like in my gut, and there's a way I could even ignore it if I wanted to, and let it be okay. It's like, well, someone's over in the corner like, oh, I can't lift this or something, and it's someone you don't really like, you know? And your heart says, you should really respond to this, but you could turn away from it. I don't know, I find it's an intention that I'm always trying to transform and be aware of. Yeah. You're nodding. Can you feel that in your world?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done. Like, I hope I'm able to face things and not dismiss them or say, okay, that thing brought up an emotion, or how am I going to embrace it or react to it, or what does that even mean? And but the examples you gave, you're like, oh yeah, that's the hard part of it, keeping it through all of the feelings. Yeah. So.
Maybe Daniel, I want to wait and see if some people who haven't jumped in yet will get in here.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, Joichi.
Say, I'm stumped. Like the intention, non-intention, like it feels like, I'm always jumping between these two sides. Like I'm either on one side or I'm on the other side. And then, feeling the negative and positive of both of those sides. And so and that drive to for cessation, for being finished, whether that's on the getting it done side or it's the letting it all go side. So just confounded.
Maybe I'll press you one further. Where does that appear in, we sit together a fair amount. Where does that appear in your sitting? How do you find those energies moving through your being?
You could say following the breath is sort of the focused, like, I'm following the breath because I have an intention to cultivate something. Or there's like the letting go and then just being driven from behind by karma, I guess.
Yeah. Daniel, you still want to jump in?
Sure. The thought that I had was about the intention without intention concept is very interesting to me because it's like respecting the nature of that like dynamic. I've been doing this practice of nonviolent communication with people, and a lot of that is about just very attentive listening to someone telling you an experience and practicing a very it's very difficult for me as a Western person, like a very hands-off, non-judgmental, like receiving, which is like kind of what that speaks to me. Like the attention without intention is like really just receiving this experience without trying to manipulate it or direct it at all, and then like having that be the direction. And it's confounding because it's like so simple and yet so like difficult to do. There's another practice that Genjo does at the beginning of the meditation where he guides us with like finding the balance point, and his instruction is to like do it, but don't make yourself stop. And I find that to be the most difficult thing because it's like it's really hard to like know when am I no longer telling myself to move. But that really speaks to me with that too, like the difficulty of that, like letting go without saying I'm now letting go. Thank you.
At the practice Daniel's talking about, it's in the the founder of our particular school of Zazen. He says to rock back and forth, side to side. So we'll have people do this, and then the arcs will get smaller and smaller. And you'll see people here do this at the temple as well. And then you're getting smaller and smaller. And then he says, don't stop yourself, but come to a resting point. It's really interesting. If you can go ahead and try it next time you sit down, and you can feel, for me at least, I feel a tautness of energy that's there when I say, don't just stop. It's like, okay, I found the center. One, it's like, oh, the center is emerging as I rely on right and left. And that's a constant process. There's a difference. Well, maybe I'll shift gears and offer a few more kind of closing reflections for everyone and see if we might have time for more questions, comments at the end. But I know many of you, might be one of your very first introductions to Buddhism. And so we didn't get into very many practical points, but I thought I would touch on a few of those before we close. And so I'm calling this last pointers. So I would say there are a few kind of really basic things you can do to help, set yourself up for success as you're practicing. And a few kind of, the right word, steps you can take to help hold yourself in your intention of practice. And one of them, I'd say, make an altar. So if you, that could be a very broad thing. We have a specific form of what that looks like here at the temple, but even actually if you go within our school's idea of what an altar should look like, it can all be completely varying. So put some sacred things in a place that's high. Eye level is actually about best, and pictures of people you loved maybe can go on there, and take care of that space. And when you receive a gift, you can actually put that gift on the offering, on your altar first, and then take it off afterwards and receive it. Spend time there every day. Recite poetry you think is beautiful there. It's really wonderful to see what happens in your heart when you cultivate an actual space that can be your place for regrounding to the sacred, to what's beautiful, to your intention. However that works for you. And you can also sit meditation there. That can be an especially nice and powerful connection to make. So I highly recommend that. So then also, if you're investigating doing some seated meditation, I always like to say this, cultivate sincerity in intention and not time. It's so easy to get hung up on how much time you're going to sit down for meditation, but rather, it can be good to press yourself in that arena once in a while and to actually make it kind of adventure. Be like, okay, once during the weekend, I'm going to sit for 40 minutes. That can be really energizing and you can really learn something from that. But we can also shut something down really quickly when we just think it's about time. Rather, one thing you could say is, okay, every day I'm going to fully get ready for meditation and put my heart there and then sit for at least 3 breaths. Sit for at least 3 breaths. And I'm almost always, if I tell myself that, I end up sitting for longer than that. Because I'm reminded and refreshed by that heart that I want to carry in the world. And it's easier for that heart to come out when the world gets completely simplified. When I put everything aside and kind of extricate it from any matters of responsibilities I might have or this or that. So I'd really recommend that. Just cultivate that heart and intention. And then the times when you want to press for time, great, go for that adventure. But don't have that be the kind of base approach you're taking with sitting meditation. In a similar way, there's undoubtedly a part of all of us that wants to dominate our suffering. It wants, like Joichi said, we might be caught on the idea, the concept, the promised land of cessation. And that can turn into kind of a raw game when we just make, then we'll take all these little shortcuts to try and hide our suffering or be frustrated when we've been doing all the right things and difficulty appears in our heart. So inevitably you will have this flow be a part of you that wants to control the world. You probably wouldn't be here in this class if you didn't have a little bit of edge of that in you. So watch for that. And for me, I usually talk to it. I find it to be a really nice way to draw it out of just like behind my eyes and kind of say, we could say, oh, the Ashura realm, just trying to battle up there to get into the place of bliss. We could talk to it and bring it into connection and call out the suffering that is actually driving that intention and not pretend that we are that. Not make that our singular view of viewing the world. And lastly, I was going to say get mixed up in community of some kind. So that can be easier said than done in COVID times right now, depending on where you live. But that can also come in the form of a book. And you can read here. It can be easy to sometimes read for knowledge. But I would recommend reading for the voice of someone you want to speak like and read for the eyes of someone that you want to see like. So for me, that is often Thich Nhat Hanh. He's someone. Also, Mary Oliver is a great bodhisattva in my life. There can be poets and people who draw us into a connection that we want to view the world with their eyes, right? So, and otherwise, finding people of the path who you can focus your energies together with other people there. Any other kind of nuts and bolts about practice questions? I know we're all in such different arenas for trying to arrange practice in our lives. Let's go, James and then Aaron.
So early on, I had difficulties with setting. It was very, let's say this. kind of the opposite of attention without intention. Very much, if you flip that completely on its head, it was very much a kind of, okay, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to observe, I'm not going to, and then the whole process was very tense and very, it was uncomfortable, but not in a good uncomfortable way, in a bad uncomfortable way. What really, there was one phrase that actually helped turn that on its head again, is, and I hope you can expand on this, is I saw a reference to Zazen as the Dharma gate of restful ease. And it's really, that's what sitting is. It's attention, restful, but without, just kind of aware, but not, not a closed fist, holding hand.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that. And now my computer wants to update.
If we lose you, we'll know what happened.
Okay.
Thank you, James. I'm going to send out to everyone that the sutra or the shastra, where that comes from. If you hear the term shastra ever, that means it wasn't a teaching that was spoken by the Buddha, but it was another teaching that's still really honored. And that's why the founder of this particular school of Zen, Dogen Zenji, in his instructions for sitting Zazen, he says Dharma gate is, or Zazen is the Dharma gate of joyful ease. Joyful ease. Yeah.
Was that was from Cooking Your Life, wasn't it?
It was probably mentioned in there, but I think the original source was the Fukanza Zengi, or the universally recommended instructions for Zazen. Yeah.
I know I haven't read those. So.
Well, I'll send it to you. You can read it. And he also calls Zazen it's not practice meditation, but where's that? Zazen is not. He says it's an art. He says it's an art, which I think sometimes we can get a little bit caught up in a formula, or like thinking this is the outcome that needs to be extracted, but sometimes it'll be a thick line with dark black ink, and other times it might be a little bit of a squiggly line with purple and yellow. So if we can approach meditation with that kind of mind, investigating the many selves of our being, it's a very different game and can help us relieve that tight-fistedness that you're talking about, James, which actually was really my experience too. I was in misery for so much of the early parts of my meditation career, you might call it. So I feel you. Erin?
I guess I'm just curious, as I'm looking at what this center is offering in the future, and you're teaching a class, and it looks like Ajo is having a talk on Thursdays or about the Diamond Sutra. Could you just say a little bit about what each of those, I guess I'm kind of curious, like this is lovely, and what is the next place I want to dive into, and are some better approached in after having a different foundation, or just trying to think of those pieces. I mean, at the same time, I've taken this class before and it resonated more, just obviously coming back to it, but if you could say a few things.
My personal path was really so in terms of meditation and practice and becoming a Buddhist, I led a very guru-centered path, which meant there was a dude who I really liked who, when I met him and encountered him, he oriented my being in a way that I was like, that's the stuff. And so I kept hanging out with him. So in terms of that, I know Myobun, myself, and Ejo were all teaching classes. And I'd say we all have different approaches. And so generally I would say, go hang out with Ejo. But he's also my teacher. And his class on the Diamond Sutra, I think, will be really wonderful. And also, I think, really approachable. But I think you really just gotta feel what's resonating. Maybe read through the Diamond Sutra once would be a good way to go. And then you could look at the classes that Myobun's teaching, and if you've seen any of her teachings. Or, I can give a quick plug for the upcoming ethics class. really it seems like in this class we've been approaching kind of the before ethics in a way, but also talking about how once we're really leaning into karma, that karma is the very question of ethics. And we've kind of tended to come back towards a more, I don't know the right word, within our own heart and mind, and receiving whatever feeling is off from whatever might have been the upright choice to do it sometime, which is really another way of talking about ethics. But we haven't talked about how we can be moving with that and all the complexities of the decisions we're making day after day after day after day. So that's, I think, the place we're going to be hanging out in my class coming up in a couple weeks now. And I think really looking a little more clearly at karma and figuring out what guideposts and markers we can use to navigate the world in a more practical, kind of action-oriented way. And then another thing I'd say is to come sit some meditation sometimes, or just stop by for a ceremony now and again. And like Joichi and I are just kind of here hanging out. And for me, at least, when I was doing that and just starting to practice, just having a little more connectivity went a really long way in being able to help me stabilize some things I was hoping to incorporate in my life. So even if you just stop by and say hi at the temple or wander into the backyard once in a while, for those of you here in Eugene, please do so. And it's invigorating for people who are here full time and just kind of plugging along. And I don't know, if you like us and have some connection with us, it could be invigorating for you too. So does that feel like it kind of gets at some things you're chewing on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there's this urge to fill silence that I am currently experiencing. Just sharing that.
Cindy?
Okay. Why do you face the wall? Why do people face the wall? Why do I face the wall? I don't know. I just do it because everybody else does.
What, Holly?
There's a guy that sat in a cave for a long time. Look at the wall.
Bodhidharma. For me, it's the only thing I found that deepens and brings closer to a kind of truth all my ideas for wanting to make a better life, which are always only going halfway again and again and again. And it throws all of that right back on me and makes me clarify it to another level every time. And I don't know if I'll ever find, get to the bottom of that.
Another question. I see people putting things on their head when they sit down. Why do they do that?
Putting what on their head?
Well, I'm not sure what they're putting on their head, whether it's their cushion or something, but I see people putting on their head before they sit. Well, I'm sorry, these are just questions that
No, they're great questions, yeah.
Why do you do that?
They're putting these on their head.
Yeah, and why?
So, this is a robe. That's a robe. Also called a raksu. It's the smallest version of a robe in our tradition. And the sewing of it is really beautiful, and I think is telling about what it is. There's many pieces that are sewn together in this intricate way, like rice paddies. And the one in the top center is you can't really see it when you're far away, but it's on the top of all of them, and then it all flows out from there. And so they're all kind of layered in a particular way on each other. And apparently at some point, someone just bugged the Buddha and said, "Hey, we can't tell who are your monks or who are not your monks because you all look different. You should get a uniform." And so he told people to make robes like this. But this robe is you receive one of these after one takes the precepts, so the 16 Bodhisattva precepts, and it becomes the tangible. You're wearing that, in one sense, your vow to live in a particular way, and you're also wearing, at the exact same time, the full expressed truth of everything that's totally present.
So how does one get to be?
To wear one? To have one?
Yeah. What is the path?
Yeah.
These are-
Totally. You ask. You ask someone who has the ability to give it. And that's a great question, and we don't usually make that, it's not advertised so heavily. It's like, if you want in the club, here's the 7-step program. How it works is just through intimacy and through people coming close, and you see someone else putting it on their head, and you ask. And usually it'll come after starting to have some relationship with Ejo. So he has regular office hours, you could say, called Sanzen. I can't believe that actually just came out. That was my first thought when I was in university. I was like, oh, he's got office hours. But times where you can go up and meet with him and start asking questions about the way and the path and cultivating a relationship with him. And usually after people doing that, it's almost, for many people, after a time, it'll be like, oh, what is it to take the precepts? What is it? What does that mean? Do I have to do it to keep being here? Is it a good thing to do or not? So everyone has their own kind of unfolding with it, and in no means is it like the way everyone should have to go. But for many people who feel nourished by the tradition and want a deepening and richening and sort of a camaraderie within the tradition and the forms and this ancient practice that's been handed to us, it's almost always a question for someone at some point whether that's what they would like to do. Yeah. So after this, I can teach you when those office hours are, and how to go hang out with Ejo if you'd be interested. Holly and then Kyle? Yeah.
There was a ceremony a few Sundays back where two folks did some stuff. Is that what they were doing?
Yeah. Except they did, they had both taken Jukai, which is what this is called, to take the precepts, which in one way, it's a way to sort of officially become a Buddhist. You receive a Buddhist, you're renamed in the tradition, you're given a name, your name of awakening. That's why I'm called Genjo, Joichi's Joichi. So they had both done that, and then there are kind of two different paths after that, and one is called Zaikei Tokudo, which means something like not home leaving ordination, and then Shukkei Tokudo, which is home leaving ordination, even though actually in our tradition you don't really leave home. So Ejo, he has a wife and kiddos and has worked as a school teacher for 20 years. So you don't have to leave home in that sense as had been traditionally done in India. So they both did the Zaikei Tokudo, the home keeping ordination. But they basically, what that means in our particular lineage through Ejo means that they've chosen to become formal students of Ejo and are becoming leaders in the community in one capacity or another, and putting that intention forward and sort of saying like, you're my guy, and I want to be working out the path with you, for the rest of my life. And there's a way that relationship could be broken, but really it's sort of been firmed up in a kind of that ritual way, and something deeper can happen in your relationship through that. And in many ways, those kind of ceremonies and what they do in bringing you closer to a teacher, you're kind of signing up for a little bit more intimacy, which can often, necessarily know how to say this. It can be a bit sharper, your relationship with them at times. You're signing up to say, there's times I go into my teacher and say like, hey, if you have anything you need, you want to like tell me, I'm happy to hold that right now. And he'll be say like, oh, the way you're cooking your food, the food you're cooking is a little bit rich and it's too much salt. Kind of like there might be something that looks like criticism, but if there's enough relationship and love to hold that, you know, he can also be like, he's actually going to watch these videos of me teaching and give constructive feedback and, you know, allow his eyes to look through me in a certain way and receive that vision a bit. So that's part of what's involved in these ceremonies and, bringing kind of a celebration to that relationship. I forget how many little esoteric things are hidden here and there. So thank you for bearing with that.
Well, and too, it's because of COVID that people don't have the intimate relationships here that they normally would.
Yeah.
You know, there's no celebrations, there's no parties or anything like that.
Yeah. Hopefully coming back. And Kyle?
Just a small thing to share. I was watching like a food show, the chef show, and you know, they're wearing aprons, and one of them says, "I should wear an apron all the time. I do things so much better." And it made me think of the Raksu.
Amen. Well, that puts us even a little bit past time. I think we might call it there. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a good 6 weeks, month and a half. Please reach out if you need anything else, have any further clarifying questions. I think I'm going to dump a whole bunch of other materials on you as a little parting farewell. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Genjo. Wonderful teacher.